detective. Thrill me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Thrill Me podcast. We're finally back. Apologies for taking so long. I put out a quick message on Facebook. We had some technical difficulties and scheduling conflicts.
AKA deleted episode.
More information on that when we actually get to that particular episode. So stay tuned on that.
Yeah, we're in the middle of a salvage job.
No Gibbo tonight. He's fucking fuming. He's fuming somewhere.
Yeah.
But he will not be available for this one, so it's just me, Maddie, and Jared. Tonight's film, Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. Obviously, there was a reason why Gibbo's not here, based upon that. He's not a horror aficionado. I believe he mentioned he was happy to let this one slide. Is that correct?
I forgot to give him the DVD. That was entirely my fault.
That's what's called technical difficulties.
Yeah. Once that happened, I believe his words though were, "I won't be upset if you blokes do it without me."
So here we are. Before we get to that, a little bit of up or down. They put the Deadpool 2 trailer. I believe it's the full trailer. Finally hit. That's directed by David Leitch, who did John Wick and Atomic Blonde, I think. And it's obviously stars Ryan Reynolds. The trailer looks pretty good for me. It seems very much in the same vein as the first one, which works fine from my end. It's definitely an up for me.
Yep. I think I'm an up as well. I liked the first one. I definitely liked it.
You had some reservations.
Yeah, I had some reservations because I thought at the end of the day it was a decent movie that was funny, and that's why it sort of kicked it into high gear. That this is great. It's for me it was a 7 out of 10, but it was a hell of a lot of fun. So I'm all for Josh Brolin in this one too. Like I'm keen to see what he's going to bring to the table. And the first one, like I enjoyed it well enough to say yeah, I'm an automatic for this one. But yeah, what we're seeing in the trailer is more of the same, and that's fine by me. So I'm an up.
Yeah.
I must be the only man in the world who hasn't seen the original Deadpool, but
just about.
But like the trailer looks good enough to get me to go back, and I'm keen to watch the first one and get into the second one as well. So they've done their job. A bit of humour, a bit of action. I'm keen to see what happens.
I've got the Blu-ray. I'll forget to drop it off today.
My only concern with Deadpool is kind of like it's so meta and so kind of cool that I think sometimes you can verge a little bit too far into that.
Yeah.
And then people start going, geez, I'm sick of this shit, and I think Deadpool's on a nice edge. The first one got the balance right. You only need to tip slightly the wrong way and you're going to lose some of your audience because they're going to go, we're sick of this kind of crap.
It's kind of like a bit like a Will Ferrell or something like that.
Yeah.
When you balance it you balance it out, it can be pure gold. But if you go too far, then you might, as you said, push it into being a bit too into yourself and
yeah. And look, I'm not saying that's going to happen here. I mean, I'd like to think that they're again trying to keep that balance right, and hopefully it'll work again. The first one was good enough for me to say, even if it was a step lower, not a great step lower, but just a little step lower, I'd still be pretty happy.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm not too concerned about that, but I worry that that sort of stuff.
The inevitability is that it is a sequel and it will probably be worse.
Yeah.
But I think there's probably enough there to make it worth going to see.
Yeah,
definitely.
A couple of pieces of news that we thought we might comment on. The first one is there's a new sort of pair of writers being placed on the Die Hard sequel, the latest Die Hard sequel. Now, the information that I know of it, which is not there's not heaps of it. I believe Len Wiseman, who directed the fourth movie, is back, which is a good thing because I think the fourth movie worked well, and I think the action stuff in that was really well done. So that's a plus. The idea that's been floating around is it's going to be a kind of mixture of sequel and prequel. So obviously the older John McClane will have a role, but it will go back and flash back to his past when he was young. And something that happened in the past will reappear in the future for him, so it'll come back.
Yeah.
The pair of writers involved now are Chad and Carey Hayes, who wrote both the Conjuring films, but there's not really a lot of information beyond what I just said. My take, look, I'm a huge fan of the series. I mean, it's very, very... Even the last one, I kind of... There were some moments I liked, but not many. I don't want to see the series die with that one, because I thought it was the worst of the lot.
Yeah, easily.
And this idea could work, but it would have to be fucking tight as a drum.
Yeah.
It would have to be super tight. And I understand not having him as a 65-year-old man running around, jumping through, off buildings and shit. That's not viable.
It's not as appealing, is it?
It's not as appealing. So I accept that that's a nice way to do it. But you could also see the bigger fans being shitty that, it's the role's essentially being recast almost.
It's the franchise just continuing for the sake of it.
But I think the idea could have some
work.
legs if it works well. It also has the propensity to be fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Too.
Yes.
Sounds like they've got the names on board though to make it work or make it something worth seeing.
Yeah, they got some. They got some people there that can push it along. Are we getting Joseph Gordon-Levitt back with the young Bruce Willis face?
Lucas Star.
I'm a little bit tentative. Obviously, the name just gets you. We're excited to have Die Hard being thrown around again. The one thing for me is that having read Die Hard Year One, as you did too, the prequel comic, it was all right, but there was always this underlying feeling of how is this never... It doesn't work that this is never brought up in Die Hard, because the whole thing about Die Hard is he's just the average cop that gets put into this situation. So having been there before, it never really worked, the prequel stuff. So the idea of him having something in his past that maybe he didn't think was so big but then comes back now might actually work better in that regard. So if it's going to be a prequel, then I'm interested to see how they do it this way. Otherwise, just fucking reboot the thing. Don't, or go with an old Bruce Willis. That's your choices, because I just don't think the prequel can't be big otherwise.
Well, it depends on what they do with it, because to me, you can have the prequel elements, but they have to be the smaller scale stuff, because the big explosions and shit.
Yeah.
If all that's happening in the past, well, once again, you come back to, well, why did we not hear about this?
Yeah,
This
why in Die Hard 2 are we saying...
this?
How did the same shit happen to the same guy twice?
Yeah.
Well,
That's
if it's a
third
prequel,
time.
that'd be the third time, Bruce. You should be.
And I think the
comfortable
comic did try and go away from that somewhat. They were smaller scale incidents that occurred in the comic,
but it was still a fairly large plot that was involved in. And if that was the case, where there's something small that he doesn't see a connection to that then comes back, in some way, okay, I'm interested to see where you're going to go with that. Like,
if it's a cold case or something though, then the action surely should be
in the future.
later on though.
Yeah,
exactly. The action should be after.
That could work. It just would have to be done right. That it's a prequel, but only in a smaller scale. At the start, and then you roll into the bigger item.
It seems like that's what it's got to be.
But then Bruce would have to be doing the action.
Yeah.
Yeah, but stuntman, I guess you can get away with it one more time.
Body doubles
and stuff.
He still looks young enough to pass for a 55-year-old.
Well, I guess the thing about him is because he's bald and has been bald for years, it doesn't stick out like dog's nuts that he's fucking lost his hair. And now, oh shit, that guy's 60.
Yeah.
Like, the other day I was watching TV and on came the Deadpool, the Dirty Harry, Fifth Dirty Harry. Poor old Clint was looking tired.
Clint was about to enter the Deadpool at that point.
He wanted to. Plus, Jim Carrey was in the picture, so he's probably fucking talking to producers going, get that fucker off the set, ASAP. So was Liam Neeson cranking out a piss poor accent.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. These films can't go on forever.
Yeah.
It's the same as the talk about Indiana Jones. Because that cropped up again just recently. That's Spielberg's next picture.
Yeah.
Like, Spielberg needs to be saying, I'll executive produce.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't want to be involved in this anymore.
I think Indy's got to be recast. And I mean, that's the perfect example of one that you can. They did whole series of young Indiana Jones and all this sort of stuff. I mean, Harrison Ford has got no interest unless you ring him with 7 figures, essentially. And then he's talking to you. I mean,
I'll do 3 lines.
He doesn't care at this point. He doesn't want to be there. Let's move on. Let's shuffle off. Like, we'll move on to another person, possibly reboot that series.
See, again, I think people are uncomfortable sometimes rebooting these major franchises like that.
Yeah, but I mean,
is,
it's just we just got to accept it at this point.
And my thinking is, look, you have to. If you want to have that character ever again, you got to go. Have to go back and recast.
People need to understand that there's no difference between this and doing, Sherlock Holmes films. It's a character that's been
James
put
Bond,
in there. Now you keep, you got. If you want to see him again, we keep going back to him. And if it's not Harrison, we just live with that because the bloke is set.
They've recast Peter Parker that many times. And people still go and see it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's whether it's going to be a good movie and a good story or not. I don't really care if you're morally bankrupt, whatever. If you got a good Indiana Jones story with a young actor, I'm in.
And I think no disrespect to Steven Spielberg, but I think that part of his career is finished.
Even the part where he wants to speak to Harrison Ford again?
No, he's happy to take Harrison's calls, but Harrison's not making calls until it's a 7-figure contract.
Yeah, that gets you on the phone. 8 figures might get me on set for a couple of days.
But you know what I mean? Like, Ready Player One is the first time he's gone back to that 80s Spielberg.
Yeah, and it made sense because it was kind of paying homage to all that stuff.
Let's face it, it was essentially a love letter to him.
Yeah.
So it works perfectly. I just think Crystal Skull showed that for the first time in his entire career, he did it for the money.
Yeah.
Right? Crystal Skull was a pure money-making exercise.
And he's put it out there, wasn't it? Didn't he even say that he disagreed with Lucas's script and whatever, but just went with it to keep the peace?
Yeah.
Everybody disagreed with the script except Lucas.
But it's funny because even the Darabont version is similar.
Yeah.
It's similar.
Yeah,
it's got a lot of the same beats that the movie ended up being. So people were saying you should have taken the Darabont script. Yeah, but it was the same shit.
Like, at the end of the day, it didn't?
It did, yeah. So at the end of the day, it was the same thing. But yeah, I just think that was a money-making exercise, and I think if Spielberg wants to stay involved, it should be in a production capacity only. But then you don't get Harrison Ford. Like, to me, Harrison Ford saying, well, I'll do it for 7 figures, plus these people have to be there.
But that's what makes me laugh. You don't want a young person that might actually really be enthusiastic about the role and want to do really well. You want the old bloke who was fantastic when he was that guy.
Yeah.
Now he couldn't give 2 shits about being that guy, but we've got to have him. We've got to have him back. No.
Guys, they just need to reboot Sean Connery doing a voiceover.
Yes.
To make it really good.
That's it.
David Connery, mate, he keeps thinking it's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen 2. He's not taking any calls.
He's not getting on the phone for any amount of cash. Not after that experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think remake it, reboot it. I mean, this is the luxury that something like Predator's got.
Yeah, it's
Predator.
the character.
Arnie was only in 1 film, and it was the first, and it was early in his career, so he didn't have the kind of clout to be saying, here's a massive amount of cash to come back for a sequel. I think they actually did approach him.
The Predators are a bit more sellable than archaeology, though.
Plus, Predator has not relied on stars; it has relied on the creature.
The beast, yeah.
And same with Alien. Well, if you wanted to make an Alien film, you didn't need a star.
Yeah, you just need a good script, which they haven't found.
It's funny because Ridley Scott's making every movie out of the sun. Surely he's run into something.
Ridley got on to planning the next 3 Alien movies and forgot to plan this one.
I'm still waiting for Aeon Flux. Very excited.
Bloody hell. Alright, second piece of news. So we got off the tangent, but this is funny.
Yeah.
German filmmaker Uwe Boll
Good name.
has come out on Twitter.
Boll, related to Boll?
Yeah.
Manute Boll?
It wasn't his nickname. His nickname was Toilet Bowl, wasn't it?
He's come out on Twitter saying that he's going to sue the makers of the new Rampage film with Dwayne Johnson.
Sue Warner Brothers asshole.
Because he made 3 pictures called Rampage back in the late 2000s, and it's kind of like he's stealing from this movie's stealing from his brand or something.
His brand, mate.
Now, just to let you know, those 3 films, I haven't seen them, but they are nothing to do with giant animals ripping apart the city. They're nothing to do with the game specifically, and if the guy's gone off on a tangent, including photographs of him looking at the poster and sticking his finger up at it.
And scribbling, you know, in paint, he's scribbling fake Rampage bullshit on the poster.
Honestly,
It's fake news. It's fake news.
what is this guy on?
I don't know.
He's just lost.
It's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. And as we said, you know, he's got to be aware that the Rampage films were... the Rampage game came out in like 1988 or whatever, so... I don't know. I think I agree with what Maddie said. Perhaps he knows this and that massive brand of his, he's actually trying to get it a couple of views on it.
Yeah, he's not above doing, you know, gimmicky shit to plug films and stuff.
No.
So, I mean, I believe he also sued another movie about the poster that allegedly looked like Blood Rain.
Which I'm assuming, you know, he took cues from other people's work for the Blood Rain games. So, you know, I don't know. The bloke is a madman.
I mean, I believe he still throws a reasonable left-right combo in the ring, because he punched out a couple of... He got some bad reviews, so he challenged the reviewers to a boxing match. Turned out he'd done some pretty decent boxing in his day and held these blokes up.
Look, if we get the invite for Raging Bull 2, we won't be accepting, put it that way.
I just want to put it out there. I think he's a very nice man.
Lovely bloke. He seems like a lovely
Look, again, I'm with you. I think this is pure publicity.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's
He's been quiet on the movie front for a while, I think, hasn't he?
Yeah, he retired. Didn't he? Remember when he went on another time that he was on a rampage himself and he was saying fuck Hollywood and all this sort of shit and retired? Which was only a year or two ago, wasn't it?
Maybe he's setting himself up for an autobiographical pick.
Maybe. A biopic.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the guy, like, he doesn't make good movies. I think we all know that. But the guy's not an idiot.
No, he's a shrewd businessman.
shrewd.
Because he was pulling in budgets at one point.
Yeah.
For was it Dragon's Lair or whatever, the one with Statham?
Yeah.
Which was a $50 million budget.
Yeah, because he's put it out there that it was a bloody tax shelter or something. He'd get half the money back from the government, and then I believe, like, the kind of reputation that he got for being such a bad filmmaker actually probably made his movies more money, because people would go, oh fuck, Huey Bowles got a new movie, we better check this out. And they all pop up in the lowest 100s, and so people kind of watch that rather than watching a middling movie that's not going to be great and not
a middling movie with expectations. You go and see one of these flicks and you go in expecting the worst.
Exactly. So I think the bloke's, you know, shrewder than we give him credit for, but fuck, it's funny watching him blow up on videos.
I believe he's got a commentary on one of his films where he basically leaves halfway through it as a gigantic rant, then leaves. I mean, this is the kind of you can't not laugh at this kind of stuff. It's brilliant.
It is. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, look, I'm right behind Mr. Bowl in his court case.
Yeah.
I hope he gets
I don't think he's going to get through the door. But
So the Rampage trilogy is what we're doing next?
yeah, that's it.
We should do bowl. We should do toilet bowl.
We might sit
A week of bowl films.
We might sit over the toilet bowl after watching it.
Yeah, I don't know if we can survive it, to be honest.
Imagine Gimbo.
He would be challenging bowlers. He'd be saying, let's do it.
He would quit. He would quit this podcast if we had put him through that, I reckon. Although we put him through worse.
Yeah.
We have.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some production value to some of Bowles' films. There is.
Yeah, but Pieces is a cult classic.
Yeah, he's still dirty on
House
that.
Horror is not quite there, but we're going to make it a cult classic.
Oh, but he didn't have to watch that one, I'll give you. All right. Let's take a quick break. Here's the trailer for Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon.
The boy murdered Silas, buried his body in the field, and dragged Molly from the house, hanging her in the farm's apple orchard.
how much cardio I have to do. It's ridiculous. There's that whole thing of making it look like you're walking, and everybody else is running their asses off. Everybody thinks we just wake up one morning and start obsessing about a girl and start stalking her, killing everybody that gets in the way.
That does seem to happen a lot with you guys.
That boy, he's going to be the best yet.
There are 11 exits from the first floor. Another 8 or 9 that might be manageable from the second floor. All the obvious weapons I've sabotaged.
Why are you doing this?
We're not going to have this conversation.
Why?
Out
What,
in the
you
street.
never-
Get in the van.
You have no idea who you're dealing with.
So how will this play out? How will this work?
You won't like what you see. I promise you that.
Make sure you're getting this. Go!
Oh, start.
What they got filming those cameras, boys?
You cannot stand here and let this happen.
Don't you get it? We're in this now. We're part of his equation.
We're right where he wants us. All of us.
You have to tell me. What happens to me?
Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon from 2006. It's directed by and produced and written by Scott Glosserman. The screenplay was also written by David J. Stevie. Now, he was interestingly included in a documentary about making it in Hollywood as a screenwriter called Dreams on Spec. I actually read the book version of it, which was kind of cool because it had some of my favourite writers like Shane Black and that talking about their time in Hollywood. So it was an interesting thing. But I think the documentary actually covers off on this film, about him writing this film. It stars Nathan Basil as Leslie Vernon, Angela Goethals as Taylor Gentry, Robert Englund as Doc Halloran, Scott Wilson as Eugene, and Zelda Rubinstein as Mrs. Collingwood. I couldn't find the information about the budget. I don't think it's large. I think it's possibly less than $1 million.
Pretty low.
And the box office was about 69,000 in the US, so it didn't really make a lot of splash. It actually made a lot more of a splash on DVD, if I'm not mistaken. That's where it made its sort of came out as a bit of a cult one. At the beginning, Taylor is actually standing in front of the Red Rabbit pub, which of course is a reference to the original Halloween.
There's like 50 references in this.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
There's quite a few references. I do like that one because it's a little more understated.
Yeah.
Okay. Maddie,
Me.
your thoughts?
I gave it about a 2.5. I wasn't sure. I was tossing up. I think 2 is pretty much just for the idea. I love the idea of it, the concept of interviewing the guy who's trying to make a name for himself as a slasher. I thought that was brilliant. Right. It was really self-aware, like it knew what it was, and I think it might have lost a bit of legs near the end when it sort of tried to twist the comedy or the explanation of what was going on into an actual plot. It got a little bit weak at the end there, but there's some good bits in it. Your slasher actually looked pretty good, and the characters were all giving you a good crack. So yeah, 2.5 for me.
All right, Jared.
Right. So I actually I kind of watched it 1.5 times in preparation. I went back and kind of reviewed a couple of little bits to clear a few things up. I was actually going to go with a 3.5, but I think I might push it up to a 4, to be honest. I mean, it's squarely aimed at horror fans, for starters, so I think you get extra points there just for indulging that a little bit and then some of the references that happen. The premise is great. Like, it's a great idea. It's kind of, in a way, you think about it and you think, how did it take so long for someone to kind of think of it and put it out there? But it's actually done really well. Like, it's not just the premise. They actually, they put their thoughts out on horror movies in some interesting ways. Maddie's spot on. It does kind of lose some legs towards the end a little bit. But yeah, I don't know why. When I kind of reviewed it that extra time, I found it even more enjoyable. So I went with a 4 just because it does indulge the horror fans in that way, and to get a really good crack at what they were trying to do out of it was a bit of a win for me. So
I think it works out really, really well. Surprisingly, the documentary stuff is its strength. I don't usually like this kind of stuff. I'm not not really a big found footage or whatever you want to call it type of thing, but something like Lake Mungo or whatever uses a similar device, which is a doco series type of thing, and this actually works in its favour really, really well. It's obviously made cheap, but it doesn't really show itself to be like what you find with cheaper films is, you know, bad acting, production design, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not required. The production design works perfectly.
The idea lends itself to the movie that they made and doesn't need to be massive.
And I think the key actors are excellent, especially Leslie Vernon. He is fantastic. Overall, it loses its steam at the end. That's its biggest issue for me, and that's why I gave it a 3.5. Could have pitched to a 4, but I looked back on that ending and just felt they kind of not dropped the ball, but they kind of lost their grip a little bit near the end, and that's its one letdown. Like really, it's got limited negatives for me, very limited negatives, and plenty of positives. So 3.5. It's a really good film, especially made on such a tight budget.
Yeah. I think there were definitely things in there that, because I haven't seen as many horror movies as you guys, that I would have missed. They would have gone over my head. So I think in saying that, that's probably why my score would have been a bit lower than you guys.
Yeah.
Well, good, matey. We're not going to bloody cut you down for doing that here. Gibbo's been giving 1.5s out for a couple of years now. We're still getting around.
The most, I think, the biggest like of the entire film is the premise.
Yeah.
What I love about it is it's a good premise, but in the wrong hands, it could have just been the premise and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But they take it in nice little directions, and they do a lot of really cool sort of little things with the whole slasher movie formula.
Yeah.
They continue to come back to the formula and talk about it and show how he incorporates the formula into what he's doing. And those things are really cool.
I actually can't think of many better ways either to deconstruct the horror films by using the killer himself as like an interview subject, but then also create someone that you want to set up in the ranks of the great slashers. They've kind of simultaneously done those two things really well. They've given you the deconstruction of the genre, but then you look at Leslie Vernon and you're like, he holds up. He holds up as one of those slashers because they've constructed a good little story around him. They've given him a good look, but then he's got that element of, you're in this movie too.
And it just gave them an opportunity to talk about different conversations. Who's the best slasher of all time, or how slashing has changed over the course of the last 40 years of horror movies. Like I thought that was like just a really solid way to start some debates between some horror fans.
Yeah,
and it kind of takes place within this universe that mentions all these movie serial killers that we know.
Yeah.
And it does it in a kind of a nice way. Like, it's not too a couple of times it's probably a little bit ham-fisted, but for the most part they kind of touch on these characters but don't go overboard with any of it and force it down your throat. So if you're not a horror fan, you can still get something out of this.
Yeah, and the way, like, probably the prime example of that for me is when he's talking to his mentor and he starts talking about how they used to do it, and he's like, you'd hit a place and then you'd go and they wouldn't know who it was or whatever. And then he starts talking about Michael and Jason, and it's clearly referencing how they changed movies.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the way they just cut a swath and then no one would find him again. And he talks about how it was a radical change in philosophy and it changed the business. And it's it's commentary on the movie business, and it works really well. Like, it's not. That's where you're talking about that balance. That sort of stuff was spot on.
Yeah. And how he kind of throws in, you get all these hacks who cut a swath and then got caught or killed.
That's right.
It's kind of like, he's talking about the burnings and these type of movies that were around at the same time as Friday the 13th and all them, but didn't make the kind of money and didn't become household, didn't have sequels, like all that stuff is interestingly sort of weaved in there. That conversation is excellent, in fact, that conversation he has with his mentor.
Yeah.
And in fact, his mentor, once again, like, kind of comes off as a bit of a he's a family man, and he and his wife are laughing and having a good old time. And
then when he's chopping up the veggies and he gets a little bit fired up, they look down and it's fucking
it's like it's obliterated.
It's like it's been blitzed. The other thing wasn't he supposed to be? I think initially he was supposed to be the killer from Black Christmas.
Yes, yeah.
So that works even better because that was the one that didn't have the sequels, and it was kind of the first. The first American slasher film. So if he's the one that's talking about that works even better.
Unfortunately, that's one thing that doesn't work in terms of it doesn't specifically indicate that in the film.
Well,
that's
I guess
somewhere in the trivia somewhere.
Yeah, I guess it was the rights and that sort of thing. But with that knowledge, even if it's not really, even if it's not true, I can't even remember where we heard it, but it works.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, even if you're watching that just with that knowledge planted in your head, it's like, that even makes it
because you're kind of like, this was the sort of the daddy of the slasher film
the mentor,
that didn't get sequels, and then Halloween ended up using similar devices that Black Christmas used, the point of view and all that sort of stuff. That was then Halloween then took a lot of that and did that, and then Friday the 13th took stuff from Halloween, and so I get that, and I think that actually does work if you look at it closely. Nathan Basil as Leslie is excellent.
Awesome. He's really good.
He's perfectly pitched as charming and sort of interesting, and then unhinged and loose cannon.
He keeps this disconnect, even in his charming moments, like when he, when he's doing the card tricks and that. Then he just kind of says something and kind of looks at the floor with a kind of half smile on his face, and he just manages the whole time to keep this fucking disconnect between him and the group.
And the whole thing about him saying, she's off limits and you can't talk to her. And then when they do try and talk to her, he fucking loses his shit and grabs her by the throat.
Yeah.
And he's sort of menacingly telling her, I told you she's off limits.
Even the subtle, I only keep pets that I can eat.
That was awesome. That was
awesome. That's for sort of showing that he is a little bit, even though he comes across, like you said, it's so friendly.
Yeah, and when you first meet him, he kind of does come across as a mate of him. Yeah, a mate.
Yeah.
But there's always this sort of slightly not quite right about him. And then it sort of blows up towards the end, which is good. But he is really, really good in what would have been probably a fairly difficult role.
Yeah.
To pull off. So I was really impressed with him.
I liked his look. I really did. The even though the mask looked a little bit like your John Merrick, the Elephant Man, but he was other than that, like the mini scythe, and he looked like a murderer.
I actually loved it. The mask had elements of like Michael Myers, like it kind of had the facial features.
But it was blank as well.
But it was blank, and it looked kind of like a kid. And then he had the overalls a la Jason, but they were ill-fitting, so they kind of made him look like a kid as well, and retained that kind of story of him, being thrown over when he was a kid. I actually really loved his look. I thought it was it referenced those other ones, but had a real sort of style that would play on its own. If I'd seen that in a standalone slasher flick,
that's it.
That's nailed the look for me.
Yeah, and just the way they used him as well. He could kill someone effectively, and you bought it.
I was less impressed with the look. Not because I don't think it was decent enough, but it's hard in the slasher game this late in the game to come off with a cool sort of look, and I don't think it gave that at all. I kind of found.
I didn't mind it.
Get on board.
And I didn't like the mini scythe. Like it's no machete, or it doesn't have.
See, that's
real
the thing.
power.
You kind of just what you said. You can't do that. You couldn't have the machete.
Yeah, exactly.
Jason.
Exactly. So he was hamstrung. They were hamstrung slightly by the fact that
I didn't mind it.
I
do different things, and
I thought the scythe was excellent because it all fit with his.
Yeah, it was all part of the whole storyline and everything.
But
I just didn't find it very cool. I guess that's
fair enough.
The test. One of the tests for me is I still look at that video cover and I just stop and have a look at the cover and see the mask and think, that's fucking good.
You'd pick that up if it was on the video on the shelf.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll get to that. I mean, look, I didn't hate it. I just didn't. It did nothing for me.
Yeah.
And it looked kind of cheap for me. That's just my thought on it. But again, you're hamstrung by the fact that Michael Myers and Jason they got the luxury of nailing that shit in the early 80s or the late 70s. I mean, the Michael Myers one is still the best look of the lot for me.
Easy.
It is just fucking phenomenal. That
and
that
Jason,
fucking faceless killer in this mask. It actually has features, but it's all white and it looks really creepy. Jason is more iconic and cool.
Jason was a stroke of luck, you know. Like he was, his original look was the generic of the generic, you know.
Yeah.
The sack and the
sack out of the
overalls.
head,
But they just when they found the hockey mask look, they nailed it.
Yeah.
So that's been the benchmark ever since. Basically, those two.
Yeah. There was a ton of nods to Jason, Michael, Freddy. And as I said before, I think they were really nicely sort of fixed in.
Yeah.
I really like the one of Kane Hodder just randomly walking into the fucking house of Elm Street.
Yeah.
And they're going, "Can you talk to us?" And he's like...
Talk to us about your neighbour, Fred. Yeah, okay.
And he just sort of disappears in the house like a wolf. He looks a bit sort of pissed off or something, Yeah,
that was one of the... Because people have a tendency to just... it's Kane Hodder, it's Jason, you know, we've got to get him for a role somewhere. So it was nice to see it just a little restrained. It's just a glimpse of, you know, of Jason walking into Freddy's house. Like.
Yeah, I like that. I think it's kind of cool that Robert Englund is a small role. I think everybody knows who he is. Everyone who knows horror films. And a lot of people who probably don't know who he is. And he's effective because he's only in it for probably about 5 minutes, I think. His screen time is really not... 2 scenes and that's it. And I like the way it's kind of like he's Dr. Loomis, pretty much. You know, that's how he looks, how he's dressed and everything. The girl skipping at the front of the house, you know, the Freddy skipping stuff was there. Favorites. What else did
wasn't
we
there
have?
Wasn't there the box from Hellraiser? Was there somewhere?
Yeah, somewhere that was shown.
In his house on the shelf or something.
Yeah, and it's just, there was stuff sprinkled throughout. And
apparently the turtles were named after the ones from Pet Sematary as well.
Oh, really? Right.
Named after the two pets. Yeah,
there we go.
So I kind of dig all those little things. And they're little Easter eggs for horror fans. And I think it worked out well. It wasn't too sort of obtrusive, which some of these movies have a tendency to do, is they have a tendency to cram this stuff in. Oh, look at how cool this is. Look how cool that is.
Yeah.
And then you're just like, you've lost me because it's too much.
It's too obvious.
And I think they've done it. I think they did a really good job of that.
Yep.
The tricks of the trade. Like, that was what I really loved about this movie. How he talks through the tricks of the trade. He talks through how he's going to do everything. And
the bit about the cardio is just brilliant. But he's sitting there, you don't know how much cardio I have. And then he's talking about, you know, the running. You got to keep up. You got to run like a gazelle and then make it look like you haven't, you're not breathing because you're supposed to be walking everywhere and all this. Yeah, that was outstanding. But they did a really good job of throwing in moments like that were kind of funny, with moments of really digging into what slashers are supposed to represent, like talking about the closet and then talking about how you're going to pick up the weapon and that's empowering yourself. It's phallic and all this sort of stuff. Like, that stuff was great.
And then they put it in at the end as well. She actually does everything that that you expect.
Yep.
And, you know, he talks about how he picks his targets.
Yeah.
And then he says that thing about, he looks over at the nerdy base and he goes, what you do is you nail a few of them to pad the stats up late in the film. It's kind of like, it's exactly how these movies go, you know. They start off with a lot of stalk and you know, you get a kill and then suddenly, you know, one every 15 minutes and then by the end he's just cut the swath through everybody to get the final girl. So I kind of really enjoyed that. He talks about the location. He talks about the final girl, how he picks a final girl and what he expects in a final girl, you know.
Yeah.
I love that. On the same token, outside the restaurant, they're sitting there. It's like you're watching a movie set film it, and he's like the director, and he's explaining it to the camera crew.
Yeah.
But and it sort of takes away from the actual scare that exists, but in doing so, it's just enabling the movie to take its flight as we're explaining this stuff for you, but we're showing you how it actually.
Well, that's it. It kind of it's hard.
I did like how you set it up and then shot the scene like it would be in a horror
film.
Which was cool.
And I think the film obviously had to forego tension and scares. You know, you weren't going to get that. That's not what you were going to get here because the concept doesn't allow it.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you're hanging around the main guy is the killer.
Yeah, so, and you know, in place of that, you're supposed to be sitting there like with a grin on your face saying, that's really cool how they've explained how he's got around it. Like the library scene, I actually really like that one, how he's talking, you know, I'm going to put this on the microfiche.
The microfiche.
And she's like, it looks just like, computer generated image. It is her. Like, you know, I've put her face onto a, you know, like, That stuff was excellent.
Yeah.
And then again, they show him, creeping around, talking to them while they're, hiding in a stack of bookshelves.
Yeah.
And then the scene plays out.
Yeah, that's right.
That was great. I thought that was.
He sets up
definitely a strength.
sets up the narrative and the mythology and all that in that one sequence, which takes maybe 2-3 minutes.
I thought it was actually
maximum.
pretty smooth how it went in and out of.
Yeah, look,
this is an actual horror movie.
At times,
and this is
some of that was a little clunky.
Yeah.
I get why they did it. Like, I know why they did it. That's what you were trying to show was here's the actual sequence. If it was a slasher film, proper slasher film, here's what it would look like. A couple of times it kind of was a little clunky just because I think those scenes were short, and I was really enjoying the time with him. The explanation is what I wanted more of.
Yeah. See, we disagreed on that too. I remember you mentioned that during the library scene. I was like, I really like this because I think it's supposed to be a little bit hokey and a bit cheesy.
Yeah. And I know why it was there, but I just found him so good to listen to, and just all that stuff, the setup and everything was so cool. It kind of just.
But then you kind of needed it. Otherwise, if you
you never knew what happened.
You never see how it's playing out. And I like a couple of times they actually did it where they cut. Straight from them watching him run into place into the scene. I thought it was really good. I liked it,
And you needed it to see, bring in the white whale, bring in Doc Halloran, do all that.
Yeah.
You needed it.
The library scene especially, I think maybe that one probably goes a bit too long in movie mode.
Yeah.
When she gets the explanation out, but again, they just dump his story out through
quickly
the
out
little from Poltergeist, and then he's standing behind and. I thought I didn't mind that so much. I thought that worked pretty well for the most part. Maybe down.
There's one in particular towards the end
where it
that doesn't really work because it's kind of like here's the setup, and then you sort of see what's going to happen.
Yeah, it gets a bit obvious, doesn't it?
But why
Especially
you didn't do that before?
The cameraman, it gets a bit obvious with the with the
you didn't do that
bits.
before. You came to the scene, and then you went into it. But this time, you're explaining the future of what's going to happen. And I found that one to be very clunky.
Yeah, those parts were a little bit clunky, I thought.
Everything about Eugene, I liked.
Yeah.
I just felt that was a nice relationship. It was like mates.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was two guys chewing the fat, and unfortunately they're talking about fucking serial murder.
The best part,
father-son sort of stuff right there.
The best part about that, and again, this is why my score's gone up, because it's one of those movies I go back to and I still notice things. The part that really got me this time around was in between all that stuff about the slashers. He just drops the whole, we're in the business of fear, and every culture's had its boogeymen, and
that was good.
Without the evil, you don't know the good.
He's justifying himself and his existence.
They're justifying the whole existence of these. Yeah. And in a way, it's the same. I remember having these same conversations about slashers to people who just look at you and say, you watch horror movies, you must be weird. And it's like, it's not that at all. Like, there's this whole thing to it, and they kind of encapsulate that in his sort of stance on why they're slashers.
Yeah.
And again, that's kind of how some people look at you. Like, you get in a conversation with someone at a barbecue like they're at, and you say, I watch horror movies, and all of a sudden they look at you like you are a fucking slasher.
Yeah.
So it's, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that stuff, and that the people were interviewing him, trying to understand it all, and it was a cool explanation, the whole business of fear thing.
As I said, I've got a dislike with the whole sequence where he's talking about the setup for the big finale.
Yep.
But I really love the bits in between that where he's explaining what he's going to do. So I'm going to be here, and I'm going to take her out here, and I'm going to remove the head of the axe and everything like that.
Yeah.
That stuff was awesome because it was basically just taking the slasher film, the big slasher sequence of finale, and breaking it down into pieces.
Yeah.
And I thought that was.
I love the pre-cracked axe.
Yeah.
Funny.
These cool sort of things where those questions always get asked in the finale. Oh, why didn't she run away? Why is the car not starting? Why is this happening?
Why is she going upstairs?
He basically explains to you why it's going to happen. Like
and does it all. Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that.
Even on the way to his sort of twist, he gives them the whole spark plugs thing. Yeah. And you're like, at that point, you don't really know, until rewatch, you don't really know that he's basically just telling them, I've taken yours too. Like, he's fucked their car up.
Yeah.
All that stuff was really cool, yeah.
I did think that when we finally switched at the end from documentary mode to film mode for the finale, that actually works. In the sense that it's the best way to end it.
Yeah.
You couldn't go down the documentary route. We've done that.
Because they'd be switching the cameras off. We'd be having the same questions about
what are you doing running around
what are you
with
doing
the
running around the
camera
camera and things like that.
So they switch nicely.
Yeah.
And it does actually work.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's the whole thing with the concept, and that's the thing that's going to turn people off as well as suck people in, is that you have to suspend a little bit of disbelief with that, because it does start off as a doco and it's pure doco, and then it transitions. But again, I found that a little bit weak, the way that I guess I was enjoying the comedy. I was enjoying the we're mates, let's talk about murdering people. I was enjoying that probably more than I was the other side of it.
Yeah.
But and I felt it was a little bit rushed. His death I found a little bit rushed, but still effective and entertaining.
Yeah. Me and Adam watched it, and I had a lot of questions about this, but then when I watched it again, I picked up on a few things that I didn't see, and in the end, despite some of the things that still strike me as a dislike, I like that it's the girl that's been interviewing him.
Yeah.
Because there's a couple of really cool moments where he's talking to her and basically telling her all these things about the girl, and he's telling, she's saying, you love her, don't you? And he's like, I love the idea of her. And he's looking at her, and you kind of...
Yeah. You're not sure if it's a sexual interest or if it's actually, I want to kill you is the thing.
And then, when you, upon the rewatch, knowing the twist, you're looking at them having that moment, and then there's the other one where he's kind of, just head down, kind of, taking it in, and she doesn't know whether, she's holding hands with him and stuff. And I'm like, I kind of like where it goes from that point on. There's still a couple of questions I've got about it, but I like how they're sort of they're kind of making this connection on screen, and saying that she's the one that he's going to be doing this all to, before they then go and rip it apart.
I mean, the twist is cool. To me, the twist is cool.
Yeah, really.
And the idea that he hadn't always had her in mind as they started working together, and the other girl was just a ruse, basically,
red herring,
in a way. That was cool.
And you see those bits, when they're having the barbecue, or when they're going to visit Eugene again, and they're saying, is this the wife says, is this the thing you're working on? And obviously talking to him like, this is your crew, this is the ones you're going to take out. But we're referring to the doco, oh yeah, this is the thing you're working on. And then later on, Eugene says, looks at him while she's asking him questions, and he looks at Leslie and says, I like her. She's a firecracker.
Yeah.
There's some of those moments. That
am I imagining? Did they figure out that the girl in the restaurant was actually not a virgin? Is that?
Yeah.
So then
they walk in on her rooting the blanket. What's
some
going
random
on?
stuff.
That's kind of where it all starts to. The scenes all start to tear apart.
That's sort of it's such a clever way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah. It was really good, and it's, as I said, I've still got a couple of questions, and that's part of where it lost some points for me.
Yeah.
And I reckon, I'll probably go and watch it again next time and say, no, I'll drag it back to the 3.5, because that overtook it a little bit this time. But, when I watched those couple of scenes leading up to it that I'd kind of glossed over a little bit earlier, it sort of held more weight for me.
Yeah, and it's like anything with a twist like that, you can go back and revisit where we were and see something that sticks out and says to you, that's where it was actually happening.
Yeah.
My last is I just love the end credits to Psycho Killer by Talking Heads.
Yeah. And again,
and it's done through the CCTV footage, and it's all sort of like grainy and sort of sort of the
clever way to do it.
Yeah, it was cool. And then how he just kind of sits up. I thought that stuff was really cool. It was just a really nice way to end it.
Yep.
Any other likes here?
I don't think. I know you'll probably lay the boot in here, but I really liked England in that role. I know there was one point where you were blowing up, and I was kind of like, but remember when we were talking about Loomis, and you were saying in that in Halloween he was just pure ham, and England was ham with the side of bacon.
I tell you what, I didn't hate him. I just, every time I hear him talk, I think of Freddy's Dead.
Yeah,
And
that's
I think,
a bad connection to have.
Like, my God. Like, I think with Robert Englund, over the years, I have come to learn that as Freddy Krueger, he had some great moments, but he's not much of an actor.
And some stinkers as well.
He's not really that great an actor. He has a real...
He's very theatrical, kind of.
He talks so... You know, it's like he's a... He's just sort of... He's talking with his hands and, you know, he's all excited. And I don't think it really hurt this because, again, he was only in it for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
so,
see, I know, I totally get what you're saying there. I could see a little bit of
as soon
Freddy,
as he walks up for the first time and he goes, "What do you think you're doing?" All I could think of was, holy shit, is that fucking Freddy's dead?
See, that exact bit, he's like, "What are you doing?" And they're saying nothing. He's like, "Why are you recording?" And all I could think of was Loomis with the... Hey, Marty, get your ass away from there. And then, the parts when he's walking in, say, "He was doing your dad on Joe the other night," and all that. And I thought, that's why Englund works, because it's essentially, it's a Loomis impersonation, and that's what Englund can do that.
I guess Donald Pleasance was a great actor who could deliver the ham on cue, on requirement. And Loomis was ham, that was what it was. Robert Englund also, I watched Urban Legend recently. I believe you said to me, why? Yeah. But his work in that is fucking awful. It's awful.
But doesn't he give it some credibility, though? He's associated with it.
Yeah, he did, though. I mean, don't get me wrong.
And that's why I felt like it was this combination of, it's Freddy playing, you know, the Ahab character,
the opposite
Loomis,
role.
And so in a sense it works.
You were probably hearing in your head little things like, "Now we're playing with power" and shit like that. I'm assuming.
Oh my God, yes, I was. But it was actually the Urban Legend connection that got me here.
Vomiting
because look, that's your fault. You shouldn't be connecting that to anything. Nobody should be connecting anything to Urban Legend.
He's working that where he's used as like a red herring, and they find the killer's sort of hoodie with the it's got like feathers in it or whatever, and the axe in his office, and he's like, "Can I help you?" Oh my God, man! Come on.
Yep. You can call the bloody agency and say you're not coming in tomorrow.
Yeah. So, but I think he works okay here because it is a short role, and essentially he is playing Dr. Loomis. That is what they've done. They've basically just made him Dr. Loomis.
Yep.
Including the beard and everything. Like he looks exactly like. Donald Pleasance.
That speaks like.
Any other likes?
I think that was it for me.
No, I think we've rolled on those for me.
All right.
Something will come to me, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's all right.
We've probably covered a fair bit of the dislikes from my end.
Yeah, a little bit.
I've already sort of touched on the fact that I wasn't a massive fan of his look, and I felt some of the little jump-in scenes were a little bit clunky.
Yep.
Specifically for me, the one that doesn't work is his explanation at the farmhouse. Because, as I said, it shows you kind of what's going to happen, which they didn't use. They didn't use that device previously, so it's kind of like, where did this come from?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
It felt like if they were going to do that, perhaps they could have been even shorter.
Yeah.
Like you say, I'm going to do this, and then like a 2-second shot of someone getting... Because it felt like we were actually going to the night.
Yeah.
And then when we got there, it played out differently, obviously. But some of the times I was thinking... Okay, so that part they had with these same two guys, has that happened? Or is that...
Yeah.
And then when you get there, you kind of lose a bit of that, but we shouldn't have been confused
I knew why they were trying to do it, because they were trying to say, this is what I intend to do. But when I get there, this is how it changed.
Yeah.
Because the twist has just been enacted, So now we've got a different ending.
Yeah, there's ways to make it more obvious than they did.
I just think it didn't work.
Yeah.
Although... I agree with you that Taylor being the final girl, it is a good twist. I liked it.
Yep.
But the problem is she doesn't fit
the mold.
What he says he wants.
Yeah. That was my problem.
Yeah.
Is that they had those nice moments, and then she seemingly at the end reveals that I'm a virgin, and then the only way she's rolled up in that other stuff, though, is by being there with him.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, okay, so you've taken this different approach, and it's a really cool approach, but the whole movie is setting up how they have to hit these marks.
Yeah.
And then you didn't hit the marks with her. So I was left kind of confused because even in the end credits, we go back to hitting those marks that the killer comes back. So it's kind of like...
In a way, you should see the twist.
Yeah.
Because she's the only other female that we saw regularly.
They started her off, though, like her first scene, she's like this super cocky, confident reporter, a little bit bitchy, and then I think they went away from that a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it was only in that first scene where she's worried about how she looks, even though she's in bloody turtlenecks the whole time. They were hideous. But the fact that they start her off with being this cocky, confident person doesn't really fit in, like you said, with that image of the victim in this case being a little bit naive, being a little bit vulnerable.
And he's always talking about vulnerability and then strength and all this sort of stuff, and this is what this girl, you know, the one that he's been watching.
Yeah, and maybe that's
what
why
she brings to the table.
Maybe that's why he gets killed,
just
because he's picked the wrong target and it just didn't work out for him. But
maybe, but I don't think that. I think that's the one thing they didn't get right. They thought the twist was awesome.
Yeah.
But then they didn't close the loop, which would have been to go back to the earlier sequences and get a little bit more about her.
Softness on her part.
That gave him the understanding, and as the audience, there's your cue.
Yeah.
She definitely fits what he wanted.
Yeah.
And the twist comes when you find out she's a virgin. You realise, oh, shit.
Yeah. But it's kind of like they do this scene of her being involved at the library when they're finding out the backstory, right? Then she actually finds out his backstory, that he's, you know, Leslie Mancuso, not Leslie Vernon. But it doesn't feel like the slasher films that they're kind of saying. Everything else feels just like a slasher film, except those
but that's
ones.
the thing. It's such the premise of the movie is that it's exposing the character that's meant to be hidden in the shadows, which is why it can never work 100%.
No,
but I think they do what they can with.
And it just feels like it diminishes the twist a little bit.
Yeah. Which was always, I reckon that was always going to happen.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was going to happen. That it was never going to. Obviously, they're presenting him as a different killer too, because we're getting such a look at the character.
Yeah.
But then when they slip back into the movie, she's the final girl of the movie part.
Yeah.
But she hasn't hit those marks of the movie kind of.
She hasn't showcased in the documentary part that she would have been the final girl.
Yeah, she has very, very minimally, and not with the same style as they do with the other parts.
Yeah.
Those ones were really slick and stylish and you know, hit those slasher elements, and I get that this was the differentiation between that and your standard slasher. That it wasn't going to be exactly the same, and she finds out that necessary information and she does those steps, but when you get there, it's it's kind of unsatisfying in a little way that we didn't go through that journey with her.
And you're saying...
We went through the journey with her in a very different way.
What we were saying before is that because you've spent all this time with Leslie Vernon, you get to know him, you can't have scares and you can't have...
You've developed a relationship with him,
Yeah.
So when you get to the actual finale...
That's the weak.
It's pretty weak because we've seen him set up for it.
Yeah.
We get the twist, and initially you say to yourself, and I know I certainly did, really cool twist. Then 5 minutes later, I'm going, but why would she be the final girl?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Yeah.
It didn't work. And then you've got no tension, you've got no scares, and you're trying to present the finale as having those elements. You know, the idea of the apple orchard.
Yeah,
great,
cool.
Great place to be.
Mist and
that was his crystal lake. You know,
but that doesn't work because it's not scary.
Yeah.
And it's not creepy, and there's no tension.
Yeah, well,
I guess you had to give that up.
Well, I guess that's kind of what Maddie's saying. It does work because the setting's cool.
Yeah.
But it lacks that. The horror element of it doesn't work because we know
you can't transition into it because you're too connected to Leslie and you're too connected to the characters because you've seen them hugging mentors
and hanging out with the guy and having a laugh with him.
Yeah,
so you've taken that away, which is fair enough. I'm assuming the filmmakers
They wouldn't.
Well
yeah,
and
they
truly knew that,
kind
but
of.
that
And
was-
you know,
absolutely,
with the speed of it, kind of goes with that. Like the finale's not prolonged. It's not a huge chase or anything, you know. So I think they were well aware of that.
It needed a bit more. I think it needed a bit more blocking as well. The way that they'd set it up with where people were, it just was a bit clunky. That was.
I actually think it could have gone a little bit longer and should have had a more of an extended sort of blue between him and her. Which, you get, that's what you get in your slashes, like you get these, Jason, how many times has Jason had, 15-minute biffos with chicks?
But obviously, as we said, that it was never going to be that because we kind of knew
and we were
what was going on. But
pushing to the end.
Yeah, we were pushing to an ending that we were aware of, in a way. But I guess the thing that maybe was missed a little bit was she knew all the weapons that were tampered with, and, he probably had a few extra tricks up his sleeve, so... Was that where you could have really nailed this is why she deserves to be the final girl? Because the resourcefulness and
she basically
the strength.
She doesn't do the things he expects.
Yeah, because she's got to find another way to do it. And then,
plus, she's privy to the environment he set up.
Yeah, and you could still end that. You could still end with the apple orchard because that's where the apple press because that's what he set up. But the way you get there is different because she knows this axe isn't going to work because the head's going to fall off or whatever.
But she goes straight for the weapon that is faulty.
Yeah. So she, if she finds another way to do it and get to his ultimate ending, then that seemingly is his defining moment. That's what he wanted. This girl that was worthy of it. But still ended the way that he'd set it
and
all
what that does is that kind of it's trying to say, well, even though she was aware of it, it's classic slasher movie trope. She would go for the weapon that doesn't work or whatever. She'll run upstairs when she shouldn't. But that then undercuts what you set up before.
Yeah,
is that this girl has seen everything,
the final girl that
and she is the final girl. Yeah. She doesn't do the stupid things.
Well, that's it. And
she does the smart things.
Yeah. And there was an opportunity there for the tension in that because she could be like, she could quickly get to the weapons rack and go to pick something up and then be like, oh, no, not that one, but get something else. But again, because he set this all up, he's fucked with something else too.
Yeah. But also, it puts him under the pump then suddenly because then he realises, oh, shit, I didn't, she's got a weapon that actually, maybe she cuts him or something and he realises, oh, bloody hell,
So, presumably,
I could have taken that approach and just played with it again.
Could I be right to assume that he's fucked with the apple press too?
I can only assume
because he's said that he can play dead.
Yeah.
So when she squashes his head with the apple press,
he could be alive.
Yeah. Well, we know he's alive because he comes up at the end and he's talked about that trick that Eugene was talking about.
Stop
playing dead.
Desperation. And
was that that element that I'm talking about? And maybe it was too well hidden or something.
But it's not well enough explained to say that was occurring. And I understand why, because you couldn't say that because then if he says in his setup, and I've also rigged the apple press, so I can't die.
But he can't say that.
Yeah,
that's the trick up his sleeve. That's the one.
So it's possible.
We know because he knows this trick to play dead, but whether you can play dead or not, if you've got a working apple press, it's fucking squashing your head. That's still going to squash your head. You're not playing dead. So
maybe that's what they were trying to say is that he had mucked with the apple press.
Yeah,
and that's why.
And that was his. And that's where I guess that what you're saying, there could have been more to that final scene to show her ingenuity and her being worthy of this status that he's placed upon her, and he still gets his ending. Everything's set up for him now to be one of the great slashers. So it's kind of, in a way, talking about this makes it more ingenious, the way they've set it up. But some of it's really confused on the screen. It feels like
they didn't quite. I just feel that they didn't take the right approach at the end.
Yeah,
which would have been and to really usurp and change the dynamic would have been that she killed him, not with the apple press, but she actually killed him.
It's hard.
She changed it up.
It's just so hard because they've set her up as being in his trust circle and they just changed the relationship completely. Yeah. So it's just difficult to do.
If they kill him, I think that weakens it.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is his master plan.
Yeah, that's right. And so that's why the apple press. That's why the assumption is the apple press must have been.
Like some people hated that. Some people hated that stuff in the credits, but
but see, you expected that because he'd already you expected he would come back.
She kills him. that doesn't happen. And
Yeah.
then you kind of like, so what about all that stuff about playing possum? And so in a sense, those end credits are the final piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
I must have switched off. I did not remember him sitting up.
Yeah, he sits up.
Yeah, it's in the end credits.
Right at the end, as the credits are rolling
So
up,
the credits
he
are rolling,
sits
and you
up
just see
on
the guy in the morgue doing the work, and then he just...
Okay. I must have missed that.
Yeah.
So
It might have been a half star then.
what I think they did was everything else worked well, except that
Yeah.
the fact that she didn't come across as.
Yeah.
To me, she was weak as piss.
Yeah.
Like she did the things that she knew damn well he'd mucked her out with.
Yeah.
And she did him anyway. And although I get what they're trying to say about
That's the
slasher
panic
films, is these people are so stupid. They'll just do the stupid things. This was the opportunity to do the opposite.
You got to survive. Yeah, you got to have, and it's that would have worked so well. Like he's just placed her on this pedestal as you're the one that can survive me or whatever, while still enacting his master plan of I'm going to be the Freddy and the Jason.
An opportunity to shift the genre as opposed to fit into the rules.
And in a way, it would have also worked into his master plan as well because she gave him a fight, a real run, and he survived it. It all worked out in the end for him,
and it all works to his reputation that this girl was,
So I just think that was probably a misstep there. That's the one thing they didn't quite get, which I think would have worked far better in the wash up.
Yep.
And would have made it a real sort of. It would have been really, really hard to criticise.
Yeah.
Because it would have been right on the money.
It still is in some ways.
Yeah.
Like they did a really, really great job of it, and it's a movie that I'll go back to for sure. Like,
and I think it's probably got it's the sort of movie you can watch again and sort of see another few little things that you didn't pick up, and maybe who knows.
It's kind of, for me, it's already hit that essential status. It maybe it's not a classic in the same. I wouldn't talk of it in the same reverence as like a Halloween or an Elm Street or something like that, but if someone's asking me about slashers, it's an essential.
Yeah.
You gotta, once you get into it, you gotta watch this one.
You'd send them to Scream, you'd send them to this.
Yeah.
And just to understand how it actually works.
It's like if you want the fun, the meta ones, you go Scream, you go this, and you go Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
And they all kind of, take that
And
fun
see,
element of it.
This one deconstructed it even further. Scream, the reason why Scream is so good is it deconstructed the genre, but was still scary.
And it was only
still
through
had,
one character.
Yes.
That one guy.
And it still had
on
the
the fly.
horror elements that actually work
And
in
then
horror.
reinvented with the twist.
Scream's that real top echelon, but this is not too far behind in terms of how well it's constructed.
Yeah.
I've still got a couple of dislikes.
Oh, really?
I add.
Robert Englund?
No, Englund's definitely the likes. When you were talking about the heavy-handed references, the one that really didn't fly with me was when he mentioned Chucky.
Yeah.
I felt like, Chucky's the one you can't go with. You can't,
I remember
that's
saying
the one that stretches it a little bit far.
I remember saying I wouldn't have had Freddy either because they're supernatural.
Yeah.
And I can understand Jason, Michael, Leatherface, possibly.
The thing that I guess
they're all spree killers who are human. Or
Maybe that's him coming back from the dead, though, is the supernatural version of him.
Yeah, and I said to you, I'd have Freddy. He had the Springwood slasher stuff before he was.
Yeah, I mean Freddy's
killer,
also a
and he had the
huge
urban
name
legend.
in the slasher film era. So,
But yeah, the
silly
Chucky
not
one,
to have
the
it.
Chucky one with the, I know, obviously Charles Lee Ray had his, criminal or whatever, but it just doesn't fit.
No.
The other ones all fit.
Yeah.
Chucky's just kind of this outlier. It wasn't a big problem. It was only a slight mention. The other one that kept getting me was Survivor Girl. I don't know whether that was a rights thing or something, but it's always been Final Girl to me.
I don't think.
So I don't know.
I don't know why they went with that because I don't think there would be a copyright on that.
No, I wouldn't have thought so. But yeah, every time they kind of said Survivor Girl, I was just kind of like, it's really minor, but it just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, Final Girl works better.
Yeah, and that was pretty much it. I think they were really minor ones, but in general, like you said, there wasn't too much to dislike. It was just that one major point about her that I just, I had to kind of sort through myself while I was watching it.
Yeah.
Man, I started watching that and I'm like, I know her head from something.
Yeah.
And then just I'm like, Home Alone sister.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
I forgot all about it. I saw it on IMDb and I was like, oh yeah, that's, I knew she looked familiar in some way.
I'm like, I know that bottom jaw.
Any other
very
dislikes, Matty?
No. I think, like I said, a lot of it was, I guess, my dislikes were the impossible position that they put themselves in. But there's a lot to like there. It was a good movie. I don't regret watching it. And
Yeah.
I'd watch it again.
That's good. I can't wait for you to come in and say, I regret this one, and give us a real kicking about something.
That's coming. Sure.
We already copped a little bit of it for It Follows, but there's going to be a night where you come in as the Gibbo, just storming in and saying, right.
You haven't got below a 2 yet.
I did 1.5 for It Follows.
Okay, but you haven't got below a 1.5. I mean, I got down to a 0. I was fucking fuming over Freddy's Dead.
I think I gave Did I give Madman a 0?
No, you gave it a half.
Did I?
Yeah.
Revise. 0.
Okay. I gave the Vidiot starring Weird Al a 4.5, basically.
So you've got you're sort of somewhere between 1.5 and 4.
I've got an odd taste.
All right, that was Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. If you want to get in touch with us, send us an email at thrillme@iinet.net.au. Like us on Facebook.
Sequel coming as of this week too, by the way.
Thrill Me Podcast Australia. And at Podomatic at thrillme.podomatic.com. Yes, Ben sent us something about it. Mentioned it. And I said I thought they tried to crowdfund it and didn't get away with it.
So the story was they did try to crowdfund it. I was on board for a DVD. I'd purchased a Blu-ray. I'd purchased a Blu-ray edition, but it never went ahead. They didn't get enough. But just this week, I actually saw it the day you were manning the Facebook posts. Yeah. I'd seen it on Facebook because I liked the page during their crowdfunding efforts, and they posted a picture of it looked like a table read. It's just a few people sitting around the table. I think it was Nathan Basil and a few of the directors and whatever, and they had a script sitting in front, just on the bottom of the photo. And it seemed to just suggest that it's all going ahead. So
interesting.
Good news.
Yeah, it is good news. Now the next episode, Wrong Bet.
The revised Wrong Bet.
Take two of Wrong Bet.
Look,
I will expand upon it further when we actually record it, but
we can assure you it was the funniest episode we've ever done.
Yeah. There will be multiple references of the lost Wrong Bet tapes throughout. But yes, it's kind of take two. We had some technical problems, but look forward to that.
Are you the technical problem?
I have created some of the technical problems. Well, again, I still maintain that I didn't have anything to do with this.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to put the blame on you because
I think that this
it did look like it was recording.
The computer, it just has its problems occasionally.
Are you telling me it's in the computer?
Oh yeah, it was in there. All right, but until next week, take it easy, and we'll catch everyone later. Cheers.
Find the podcast at Podomatic or on iTunes. Don't forget to rate and review. Like us on Facebook at Thrill Me Podcast Australia, or contact us at thrillme, all one word, all lowercase, at iinet.net.au.